Hello everyone and welcome back. So now we're going to talk about SQL injection. So SQL injection refers to an injection attack where an attacker can use malicious SQL code to try to dump databases or get information. And we're going to see a little bit of an example of that today. We're going to try some manual attacks and then we're going to use a tool called SQL Map to see if we can get any more information out of a machine. So let's go into our Kali machine. And I'm going to kind of continue from where we left off. So right now we're at a login page for the admin. And what we need to do is we need to try and see if we can fuzz this a little bit and see if there's anything good in here in terms of SQL injection. So let's go to Google. And really we just need like a little cheat sheet. So if we say SQL injection cheat sheet, and the one I like, there's one on Pen Tester Lab that has a good one. Let's use that one. So if you come onto here, there's a bunch of these that you can enter in. And you could sit here and try all of them if you want. I like to just try a few. So if you want, you can just copy and paste them right in. And I like to put them in the login, sometimes just put them in the password and try logging in. And just because one doesn't work doesn't mean that one of these won't work. So we can just keep going through the list and trying and trying. And eventually, if there is SQL injection here, you'll actually be able to log in as a user, perhaps even as an administrator. But unfortunately, if there is SQL injection here, I haven't quite found it yet, but there is another way. So let's go ahead and look at that other way. We're going to use SQL Map to do this. But first, we need to get logged back in as the administrator. So we did that with cross-site scripting. And I'm going to go ahead and just do that again because I don't have the cookies anymore. So if you remember correctly, we just set up a link to our malicious PHP. So I'm going to do that one more time. If we Alt-Tab back over, we go back to the home page. If we haven't reverted our box, it should take us here, pull a session ID, and if we sit here for a second, I believe this is ours, we sit here for another second, it should give us a session ID of an admin. So let's go ahead and wait that out for a second. Okay, so we have this now. And if you're just stalling a little bit, I did click around the page, just kind of clicked on the admin link, see if I can get anything to pop up, but you might just have to be patient on this one. So now we're going to do what we did before. Let's go into our cookies manager. We're just going to edit this cookie and drop in our admin cookie in here. Okay, let's click on admin. So now we're in here. And if we kind of look around, we click around, see if we can find anything that looks like it might be SQL. And the one thing that I found here was this edit page. So if you look at these, let's look at post 1 here and just hit edit. So it's giving us an ID up here, an ID of 1. And when we see an ID like this, this is telling us that it's probably using a SQL database in the background. So what we can do then is we can attempt to inject something here and see if it tells us any more information. So I just put a single quotation in the line here. And if you look, now it says MySQL fetch. So we are running a SQL database in the background. Now we can get a little bit more malicious and try to attack this. So we're going to use a tool called SQL Map. SQL Map is taught in the OSCP PWK course, but you're not allowed to use it on the exam because really it's an auto-own type tool. It's good to know though. It's really good to know, and I think that's why they give you practice with it, is because in the real world it is very, very useful. So I'm just going to show you how useful it can be. So let's just go ahead and check to see what we can get out of this. I'm just going to give a URL here, and the URL we're going to do is the one we were just at. Okay, so this is the URL we were just at. We can confirm that really quick. I did put a quotation in here, but if we go back one, you will see that it was ID of 1. So we're going to go ahead and go off of that, since we found that there might be a vulnerability there with SQL injection. And then we can put our cookie ID in. So we can run this as an admin here. And let's paste that cookie that we just used. And let's just hit enter. Okay, so for me, immediately it runs through here and it tells me that there is blind SQL injection here. So when it's saying that it's blind, what it's meaning is that it's attacking the database here with true or false questions. And then it's figuring the answer based on the application's response. So we do have SQL injection, and this is just basically a quick test to say, hey, is there any type of injection here? And now that we're seeing it, we can do a dump. So if you tab up, all you have to do is that, -- dump, and hit enter. So it's going through, it's already dumping the database of the blog here. And it's asking us, do we want to store hashes to a temporary file? No, that's fine. We don't have to do that. And so it's found password hashes. And it's asking us, do we want to crack them with the dictionary-based attack? Sure, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so it ran through this, and because I've run through this before, you might see a few more questions here. So if it asks you what kind of dictionary attack, just go with whatever default it gives you. It already has a word list that it's going to use. It used my word list already because I already selected that in an earlier attempt. So if you come in here, you actually see that we have a password for the administrator. So now we have a way to log in. And what's interesting here too is we also have a potential backdoor here to inject some sort of malicious code or a malicious shell in order to get a reverse shell here. We could do that. We could reverse shell into this and we could start trying to dump information. Maybe we can only inject something here that just lets us put our own ID in. So if we can inject something where instead of ID here, we have like a command, and maybe we can just run commands. Maybe we can say we want to run ls, or we want to look at, Etsy password, or we want to look at the shadow file. Those are things we can do. As of right now, we're not going to get into that. So I just want you to be aware of how SQL injection works and what to look for. You're not going to see a ton of it in the course. You will see a little bit of it, but I think that the practice that you're going to see in the PWK course is really going to give you what you need throughout the course, and it's just going to be an extension of what we covered. So they're going to have some things for you to work on, some practice exercises in terms of just practicing getting in with a basic login, and then practicing getting in with SQL Map. So basically what we did today. And the nice thing about SQL Map 2 is if you use it, let's see if we can pull this back up. They do have a few options in here, and one of the ones that I like, if it ever works, which it does occasionally, is this OS shell or this OS pwn here. So what this will do is if you add that as a switch, it'll attempt to get a shell for you without you having to do any work. So we can hit enter here. It's going to ask what kind of application language this is using. It's using PHP, we know that. And it tried here, but it didn't get in. So we need to do more on our end to try to get a shell on this machine. We absolutely can. But like I said, we're not going to cover that because we don't really need to touch base on how to do that right now. So that's really it for this lesson. You're going to encounter more of this in the PWK course, but just understanding and touching base on this and just knowing that if you see a login like that, maybe you start fuzzing it with some things and seeing if you can get in. And if you can't fuzz it like that, maybe you get access to the administration another way, like we did here with getting the cookies and stealing them from the administrator, and then you check and see if there's SQL injection. So there's usually more than one way in, especially with the OSCP labs. You're going to find that there's multiple ways to hack a machine. and it's just persistence and enumeration. So we'll cover more of this when we do our boxes at the end and the capstone, and you may see this again. So when we cover that bridge, we'll kind of go over a little bit more of how to own a machine with SQL injection. So that's it for this lesson. My name is Heath Adams, and I thank you for joining me.